thank you very much for joining me. You've just written the book, Dio in fondo a destra, which in English means God over on the right. It's like a road signal. Is that right? So to translate for English people, it's like you can find God over on the right. Is that was the idea of the title?
Yeah, it's a bit an ironical title because it indicates God as it was a road signal. So it shows the instrumentalization of religion made by people on the right side of the world politics.
Yes, and so your book looks at how religion and particularly Christianity is being used by political leaders on the right, nationalists, populists. So for some people, they would be quite surprised to see religion being used like this. Maybe some people feel that, in politics, you've got to keep religion out of it. People aren't interested in Europe, in God anymore. Can you tell us then what this phenomenon has revealed? The fact that we've seen political leaders like Matteo Salvini in Italy holding the rosary during political rallies. Tell us what is going on.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that politics, at least in Italy, but not only in Italy, uses religion and especially Christianity, religion, Christian faith, it's not new. We had, for example, in Italy, for 50 years, the main party was Christian Democrat Party. What struck me is, first of all, that in a very few years, religion, which was disappearing from the political arena, suddenly imposed itself again. It became again very much a point of reference for all kind of politics, but especially from right-wing populists. So first of all, people like Matteo Salvini in Italy, who was never interested in faith, in religion, in Christianity. Before 2018, he never mentioned the gospel. And suddenly he started to kiss the crucifix during electoral meetings, to swear on the gospel, to use Christian symbols in the Senate. So it was very suddenly and very marked. Apparently, there was some kind of switch that made Matteo Salvini, as well as Giorgia Meloni in Italy, use very directly Christian symbols. First of all. Secondly, if you look at the broader picture, you notice that in the same time, this phenomenon happened also in other countries, not only Donald Trump in the United States, Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, Viktor Orban in Hungary, the latest expression of the Le Pen family in France, Marion Maréchal Le Pen, Vladimir Putin in Russia. They all made a pretty sudden choice to use Christian symbols, more or less in the same years, using more or less the same kind of words and the same kind of rhetoric. So I noticed that there was, for example, a common reference to the Mary of Fatima, which was a mythology of the 19th century, an anti-communist mythology of the 19th century, suddenly used again from the right-wing politics in a pretty coordinated way. So, first of all, politicians who never used Christianity suddenly used it. Secondly, they used it in an international coordinated way. And thirdly, it's just this part of the political spectrum, so the right-wing populist nationalists who use Christianity in this way, in an era, and that's the final remark, in an era where in Rome there is a pope who tells the world exactly the contrary of what Matteo Salvini, Viktor Orban, Donald Trump, and Vladimir Putin are saying, for example, about migration or ecology or capitalism. So suddenly, in a few years, it appeared to me clear that something was happening, and this is what I wrote about. So Christianity suddenly used as a political tool in a cultural and political war.
And that's what it is. It's a global culture war in many respects. And so what's interesting is, and it's good to hear your thoughts on this, why do they see religion and Christianity as useful in this way? What is it that makes the symbols of the Christian faith powerful for them?
Well, my impression is that on one hand you have countries that have a very old Christian tradition. So everybody knows what is a crucifix. Everybody knows what is a prayer. Everybody has in his own family some kind of memory of religion life. Which could, by the way, be very superficial. It's not a way of living the faith. It's more a memory. As Olivier Roy, the French sociologist I had the opportunity to interview, underlines, it's not about a return to the past. It's not a return to Christianity. It's much more a nostalgia of a world which is not more existing. And Christianity is, of course, from a symbolic point of view, from the language, from the memory, it's something that everybody understands, everybody recognizes. So, first of all, there is this underground consciousness of Christianity. What is interesting is that if you look at the profile of these politicians, for example, Matteo Salvini in Italy, but Viktor Orban in the United States, in Hungary, or Donald Trump in the United States, or Vladimir Putin in Russia, they are not people. They were not, at least, people of faith. They don't follow, for example, the teaching of the church regard the migrants, but not even regarding bioethics, for example. So, nor a progressive agenda, neither a conservative agenda. They actually were completely indifferent to Christianity. But at a certain point, they understand that to give, I would say, soul to their electoral exploit, to assure an endurance of their political experience, they have to find some symbolical and cultural argument in order to hold the power. And from this point of view, they discover Christianity as a symbolic deposit that everybody recognize, and they use it. But they use it not as a faith. They use it as an identity marker. And I think that's the point. They use Christianity in order to give a message to an electorate which is a bit lost in front of globalization, of the economical crisis, of the arriving of migrants, of the meeting of other cultures. All these countries suffered some kind of decline in the last 10, 15 years. Economical decline. People lost the advantages they had obtained from the Second World War on. All these countries are facing some kind of economical, social, political decline. And so to use Christianity is just a message to this electorate to reassure these people that, look, the society is not changing. We are still there. There is still this little nice word we all know. So Christianity is reduced to some kind of identity marker of moral values, of social order. It has not so much to do, or even nothing to do, with Christian faith.
Well, I think that's fascinating, and I think it's clear to see, particularly when you look at some of the leaders using Christian symbols. I want to ask you though about Russia and Putin's use of faith, because that was constitutes a chapter in your book. Putin has clearly, in some ways, almost led the way on this by really bringing the Russian Orthodox Church into his orbit as his kind of, almost a personal church for Putin. How important is Russia in this global culture war that you have set out in your book?
Well, in some way, Putin was the first one. The economical crisis exploded in the United States in 2007, 2008, and it arrived to Russia some years later, giving Putin the time to organize and becoming the frontman, the reference point of all the nationalists in the world. That's paradoxically because, Russia was, of course, a point of reference for the left-wing communist parties around the world, and in a few years it became a point of reference of all the nationalist, populist, right-wing politicians around the world. It's paradoxically, but it was very clever from Putin's point of view. He understood before the others that he needed a soul to his politics. He inherited a country which was in some way injured, which suffered from the collapse of the Soviet Union, from an empire which became a little country where economically had to struggle. And he had the political intelligence to give pride back to Russian people at cost of the opposition, at cost of the civil society, at cost of the democracy, but he gave back the pride to Russian people. But at a certain point, he understood, that's my theory, he understood that without a soul, without a symbolic, historical, cultural content, his power would evaporate. So he find out which is the, let's say, perennial soul of Russian history, the Christian Orthodox faith. And so he converted. Suddenly, as Salvini, as Bolsonaro, as Trump, he suddenly became a devotee, and he has begun to kiss the Russian icons. He was always present at Christmas and at Easter masses, and he began to have also a personal spiritual father. Let's say in the history of Russia, there is always this reciprocal interest from state and church to go together. So Putin didn't discover anything. What he discovered is that without Soviet Union, he had to reinvent some kind of new power with, I repeat, with a soul. And so he actually, what he made was to create some sort of Orthodox Soviet Union, a new Soviet Union with a new influence around the world, political, economical, in the Middle East, in North Africa, and in the rest of the world, but also with a very clear reference to values, moral, and religion.
Right, and in some ways, we could see the link between Putin's approach to faith or to religion and what President Trump has done and is doing. can you see a link there? I mean, it seems very similar.
Yeah, of course. In writing a book about several countries, you have also to recognize that every country has his own path, his own history, his own specificity. But indeed, you can find, I think, some common dynamics, a red line that is similar in all these countries. Donald Trump has some kind of similarity. He is the head of a country where white Christians were a majority till 15 years ago, and a country which was the superpower after the collapse of Soviet Union, and discovered how much difficult it was to be the only superpower remained. A country that faced a big economical decline with the economical crisis of 2008, and where the white Christians felt at a certain point to be no more majority and to be to facing a change of the social, ethnical, and political landscape. And so they feared, especially the white Christians, they feared they were losing their country. And for them, from their point of view, the election of the first Afro-American president, Barack Obama, and the decision of the Supreme Court to recognize gay marriages was just the confirmation that they were losing their country. And so Donald Trump is not, of course, a Christian figure. He is, I write in the book, he's perhaps the most immoral president of the United States. He has nothing to do with Christian faith. He's unable to mention even just one passage of the Bible. But if the Christian whites and the WASP and this part of electorate is in war, in a cultural war with modernity, then he is the warrior. He is the man who can make this war a success. And even if he personally doesn't follow the teaching of the church, the Catholic Church, of some Protestant church, but in his agenda, he tried, or he succeeded, to realize the agenda of the evangelical Christian whites concerning funding of Christian NGOs, concerning the gay couple, concerning the migration from Muslim countries. He just realized, indeed, an agenda of, but an agenda, let's say, of fear from modernity. I write that God Bless America was the motto of the United States, and now with Trump it became God Defend America from the decline.
Mm-hmm. And we've clearly got this, this global phenomenon of religion or Christianity being used by politicians, as you say, to give them give a soul to their power, or to give an identity to the people, or a part of identity politics. But Pope Francis, as you say, is in the book an antidote to all of this. Are we on course for a big global battle in that sense? We've got the Pope as the leader of Christianity globally, or the Catholic Church globally, in a kind of opposition to this phenomenon. So where is it heading?
Yeah, of course, it's striking that in a period where these politicians are trying to take control of Christianity, there is a pope who tells exactly the contrary of what they are saying concerning, I don't know, migration, concerning capitalism, concerning the relationship with China, concerning ecology, he is saying that Christianity builds walls, doesn't build walls, but bridges. He is saying that you have to dialogue with modernity. He is saying you have to be an open church, which is exactly the contrary, not only because it's not nationalist. He is saying, on the contrary, that the poor of every nations are brothers. There is no national difference. But perhaps most importantly, he is trying to bridge the gap between culture and religion. He is trying to make the world understand that religion without faith is nothing. It's not a real religion. He's trying to make the world and the faithful discover the message of the faith. So his aim is exactly on the opposite of reducing Christianity to a symbol, to a political tool, to an identity marker. And what is interesting is, in the book I had the opportunity to interview also Timothy Radcliffe, the ex-Master General of the Dominicians. He made me notice, do you know that in the first centuries, Christians authors, Christians artists couldn't paint the crucifix because it was a scandal for them. To imagine that God was dead and crucified was unimaginable, was a shame, and so they couldn't succeed to paint Jesus Christ dead and crucified, and it took them some centuries to made this kind of representation. And in Santa Sabina, in the Basilica where Timothy Radcliffe had welcomed me, there is one of the first representation of Jesus Christ crucified. So that is very interesting to underline. The real meaning of the crucifix is scandalous, is inimaginable, is shocking, whereas the use of the crucifix for political means, for example, against the Muslim migrants, it's so at odds with the real meaning of Christianity. I think this Pope is trying to rediscover the real meaning of Christianity in the society and in the personal life of faithful. And the populist, nationalist politicians are making exactly the contrary. They are reducing Christianity to a symbol which has not so much to do with personal life and which has not much to do with conversion and which actually has not much to do with Christian faith.
Yes. And finally, you do write in your book about Brexit. Although there isn't that much evidence to say that somehow Brexit was fueled by a kind of religious nationalism, although some people have said that Brexit was a second Reformation. What are your thoughts about the use of religion or the possible use of religion in the UK political scene with Brexit?
Yeah, I didn't explain so much the social Christian milieu who could have supported the Brexit. But in the interview with Timothy Radcliffe, I try to show a little bit the more broader picture. So Christianity is naturally a religion of dialogue, of openness to the world, openness to the diversity, and that's not some weird theological progressive theory. It's just reading the sacred scripture, reading the Bible, reading the gospel. It's clear that the openness is there in Christianity since the beginning, and the experience of meeting the other who is actually a brother or a sister is fundamental in Christian faith. From this point of view, to divide, to isolate, to separate is something that it's not, let's say, in the meaning, in the profound meaning of Christianity. I don't want to say Brexit is a non-Christian. I just say that, as Timothy Radcliffe says, if you start to say, okay, we in the United Kingdom are so different with the rest of Europe that we have to divide, then it can go on and on and on. And at a certain point, the people from London will say, no, we separate from the rest of London. And then the people of Wales will separate from the rest of United Kingdom, and the people of the North from the people of the South, and so on and so on and so on, which is a divisive dynamic that can cause a lot of damage, and which, in some ways, it's not in line with a idea of openness that Christianity presents.
Well, Iacopo, thank you very much for your time. Dio in Fonda Destra, only available in Italian at the moment.
At the moment.
But the issue's very relevant to the world, particularly the English-speaking world. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.